Discover the truth in His Word.
Researchers say that all of us dream, usually several times each night. Sometimes those dreams are good. Perhaps you've awakened right in the middle of a particularly wonderful dream and are disappointed that you can't get back to sleep and finish it. Or maybe you wake up in a cold sweat, breathing hard, and are so relieved to discover that the really sad or scary dream you were having was only that, just a dream. But most of our dreams we don't remember. President Abraham Lincoln once had a dream he remembered but wished he had not. He shared it with his close friend Ward Hill Layman, who wrote it down in Lincoln's own words. "About 10 days ago," the president recalled, "I retired very late. I soon began to dream. There seemed to be a death-like stillness about me. Then I heard subdued sobs as if a number of people were weeping. I thought I left my bed and wandered downstairs. There the silence was broken by pitiful sobbing, but the mourners were invisible. I went from room to room. No living person was in sight, but the same mournful sounds of distress met me as I passed along. I was puzzled and alarmed. I kept on until I arrived in the East Room. There I met a sickening surprise. Before me was a platform for a coffin of someone of state. Around it were soldiers acting as guards, and there was a throng of people gazing mournfully upon the corpse whose face was covered. 'Who is dead in the White House?' I demanded of one of the soldiers. 'The President,' was his answer. 'He was killed by an assassin.' A few days later, on April 14, 1865, a much-loved President, Abraham Lincoln, was killed by John Wilkes Booth. His body was taken to lie in state in the East Room of the White House. A very remarkable man, and a very remarkable dream. You see, some dreams actually do come true. But perhaps the most remarkable dream ever recorded in all of history occurred one night over 2,600 years ago in the ancient kingdom of Babylon. The dream is well documented, for it was written and told by the man who experienced it. The biblical book of Daniel, chapter 2, tells the story. However, unlike President Lincoln, this ruler could not recall what he had dreamed. He felt that it was extremely important. And indeed it was. God had given him a dream that outlined for us the world's history, especially of Europe and the Middle East, from King Nebuchadnezzar's day until the end of time. Thank God that he shared with us what the future holds. Babylon, the first world empire, was the greatest, richest, and most influential of all the empires in the then-known civilized world. It also had the most powerful king. This leader of men had managed by sheer force to put down his enemies one by one until his kingdom stood as the queen of nations. In the second year of his reign, King Nebuchadnezzar went to bed wondering just how long his kingdom would endure. He, like other rulers, wanted to know about the future. That night, God looked down from heaven and chose to entrust this benevolent dictator with a look into the future. When the king woke up early from his fitful sleep, he was troubled. He had experienced a dream, and it was something of great importance, but he couldn't remember what it was. The Babylonians placed great importance on dreams, and the king wanted to know the dream and its interpretation. Of course, he had astrologers, magicians, enchanters, and sorcerers. Surely they could tell him what it was all about. Despite the early hour, they were summoned to the court. When they came in and stood before the king, he said to them, "I have had a dream that troubles me, and I want to know what it means." Daniel 2:3. These men were like many who pretend to know and foretell the future. They could make a guess at interpreting dreams, but they really didn't know the dream. They stalled for time. Finally they said, "O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give you the interpretation." But their self-confidence soon vanished as the proud monarch, tired of their stalling, said, "My decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. However, if you tell the dream and its interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation." Verses 4 through 6. Again they tried to get the king to tell the dream. The king knew by this time that they were frauds. He threatened them again, and finally they confessed. There is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. Therefore no king, lord, or ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. There is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. Daniel 2:10 and 11. The Bible says the king was furious, and he commanded his soldiers to execute all of the wise men. Unfortunately, Daniel and the 3 Hebrew young men with him were classed among the wise men, though at the time Daniel and his 3 friends were not with the wise men. When the soldiers came to get Daniel for the execution, he was shocked. But he asked for time that he might consult the God whose dwelling was not with men, and ask for wisdom to make the dream known to the king. Verses 12 through 15. The king granted Daniel time to talk to his God, the God of creation. What a responsibility rested upon Daniel's shoulders! Not only was his life and the lives of his 3 friends at stake, but the lives of all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel returned to his house and explained the situation. They all pled for mercy from the God of heaven to reveal this mystery, so that they might not be executed with the rest of the wise men in Babylon. What a prayer meeting that was! 4 young Hebrews praying that God would reveal the dream of a heathen king, and before a fateful deadline. Verses 16 through 18. The Bible says that the God of Daniel that very night revealed the secret dream to him in a night vision. The God of heaven did not fail to hear and honor those prayers. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven and said, I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you. For you have made known to us the king's demand. Verses 19 through 23. What excitement there must have been in the house of Daniel and the 3 Hebrew friends. Daniel ran to the chief executioner Arioch and said, Do not execute the wise men of Babylon. Take me to the king, and I will interpret his dream for him. Verse 24. As Daniel came into the presence of the king, Nebuchadnezzar asked him if he was able to make known what the king had dreamed, along with its interpretation. Let's take a look at how Daniel replied to the king. The secret which the king has demanded, the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, and the soothsayers cannot declare to the king. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will be in the latter days. Verses 27 and 28. Notice that Daniel did not take credit for this knowledge. He knew that only God could reveal the future. No doubt he had studied Isaiah 46:9 and 10. For I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet come. This wisdom came from God, who had taken this occasion to outline the history of the world for over 2,600 years through a dream he gave to King Nebuchadnezzar. First, Daniel gives the background of this dream that the king had dreamed. As for you, O king, thoughts came to your mind while on your bed about what would come to pass after this, and he who reveals secrets has made known to you what will be. Daniel 2:28 and 29. Next, Daniel tells the dream. You, O king, were watching, and behold a great image. This great image, whose splendor was excellent, stood before you, and its form was awesome. Can't you almost hear the king saying excitedly, Yes, yes, that's it. Go on, go on. Then Daniel continues. This image's head was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You watched while a stone was cut out without hands, which struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed together, and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away so that no trace of them was found. And the stone